So a while back, I got a comment, which I didn't save, and I regret that now, because even with how small my channel is, it was long enough ago that that comment is now lost to the wind. So, whoever you are, I cannot give you your proper credit. Anyway, this mystery person asked me if I'd ever consider doing a video on Finn from Adventure Time. The reason I did not save that comment was because, at the time, I dismissed it out of hand. See, back then, I hadn't watched Adventure Time in well over 5 years, and I'd never even gotten past Season 7. So I just thought, of course I'm not going to do that. I doubt I'm ever gonna pick it back up, so I can't speak on how he's represented. Except that little comment stuck in the back of my mind and wore me down over several months because I actually did like Adventure Time back in the day. I just sort of fell off of watching it for reasons unexplainable by me, other than it probably had something to do with either my ADD or my depression, or both. So I sat down to watch the rest of Adventure Time, and also Distant Lands, and holy shit, I am so glad I did. Because that ending, and Obsidian, and Together Again coming out of nowhere and punching me in the fucking face with feelings, and Baby Peppermint? I love this dark magic candy child, and I will fight anyone and everyone for him. But none of that is the point of this video, and also I am so mad at myself for not saving that comment. Thank you, whoever you are. We are here today because of you. Okay, so first off, I need to put up some standard disclaimers. I am not an amputee, so I'm not basing this off of personal experience. I'm basing it off of what I've heard and read from actual amputees. I'm also not going to touch the comics because catching up on the show alone was quite enough. And also, I know myself, it takes me an embarrassingly long time to read anything because I inevitably end up binging as much as I can in a short period, and then forgetting I was reading it at all until months later, or whenever my brain decides it is a good time to circle back on it. Anyway, in my rewatch, I picked up right here Billy's Bucket List, the last episode of Season 5, in which Finn goes on a quest to fulfill the titular bucket list, conquers his fear of the ocean, which in hindsight is probably trauma-related, and dear god, someone get this kid some therapy, and learns that his biological father is still alive and kicking out there somewhere in the universe. He and Jake then proceed to go to Prismo to ask him how to get to the Crystal Citadel, which is basically the most secure prison in the multiverse. Prismo tells them the only way to do that is to kill a Wishmaster, which they can do by waking his sleeping host body. Because Prismo is just the dream of an old dude who'll fall asleep again in roughly 1,000 years, and yes, Adventure Time is fucking wild and I love it. At which point, the Lich, who's been catatonic in the corner for a while now, steps in and actually kills Prismo's host body, killing him permanently, for now, which opens a portal to the Crystal Citadel, and Finn and Jake proceed to hitch a ride to find Finn's bio-dad. Except, of course, when they do, he's a huge disappointment, and the Lich is pulling some bullshit for the 75th time, and Finn dips into some deep denial, and in an effort to force Martin, the piece of human scum that unfortunately had a hand in creating our good best boy Finn the human, to stay or take him with him, or something, he ends up gripping an escaping ship of multiverse criminals so tightly and desperately with his grass sword arm thing that it tears clean off, taking his original flesh arm with it. I have got to pause here and say, it really is amazing and a true testament to the skill of the animators that even with such a simplistic style, they managed to perfectly communicate a feeling of utterly stunned and traumatized in an everything is blank right now and life isn't real sort of way. Just chef's kiss. Bravo. You hurt my soul, but damn did you do it well. Which moves us on to the first big thing I want to hit on. How does Finn cope with his trauma? Poorly. Very poorly. Dear God, this poor child. 2 episodes later, we find Finn deeply traumatized and absolutely furious at Martin, deciding the rational course of action here is to build a tower into space to go find Martin and rip his arm off in revenge. Which is...
Daddy's got an arm, and baby's gonna harm his arm by tearing it off his dad. Baby's building a tower into space. Space is where he's gonna find his dad. Daddy's got an arm, and baby's gonna harm his arm by tearing it off his dad.
Really not healthy, to say the least, but it's also very understandable. Anyway, it obviously doesn't work, it's extremely dangerous, and he nearly dies. But thanks to some mildly morally questionable intervention from Bubblegum, he does end the episode in a slightly better place mentally, so that's something, at least. Which brings us to the next episode I want to talk about, Breezy. This is my least favorite episode of Adventure Time, for multiple reasons, but I'll get into those in a second. The episode finds Finn still in a deep funk, convincing himself that making out with a bunch of princesses will make him feel better about everything, except because he's, 15 at this point, and hasn't really had much experience or exposure to kissing and making out and stuff. His definition of makeout is a quick peck on the lips. In this episode, we're also introduced to Breezy, a runaway queen bee, who falls in love with the flower growing out of Finn's stump. Oh, right, Finn has a flower growing out of his stump. Maybe I should have mentioned that earlier. Well. Anyway, Breezy becomes his wingwoman in an effort to save Finn's flower because they both figure it's wilting because he's depressed. So we're once again dealing with deeply unhealthy coping mechanisms, this time pushed along by an enabler. But that would honestly be fine as a theme. Adventure Time doesn't exactly shy away from harder topics. I mean, hell, the world itself is the remnants left behind after nuclear Armageddon. But, well...
I know all about your dirty deeds. Now it's Lumpy's turn to slump those lips. Bring it in, baby. Where are you going?
That's it. We made up.
What? I didn't wait infinity for a dip in the kiddie pool. We're taking this to the deep end.
But I'm not a good swimmer.
Don't be scared, Finn. Lumpy's on lifeguard duty.
Listen, I couldn't stand LSP before this episode. Now? Just fucking chuck her out the window. I never want to see her again. What the fuck? In case anyone's confused, that, right there, was sexual assault. And before you try to argue with me here...
Stop it. Get some help.
Finn agreed to what he thought was a makeout, aka a quick peck on the lips. LSP wasn't satisfied with that and pushed things further. Obviously, we don't know exactly what went down on account of the fade to black, but it doesn't fucking matter. Kissing someone without their consent is assault, and guess the fuck what? Finn did not consent. Or rather, he consented at first, and then consent was withdrawn, and that was ignored, which is, once again, assault. Just... God, I hate LSP so much. I cannot stand this moldy floating grape, or her annoying fucking voice, and I hate that she's essentially the only reason Ooh survived the whole Elements disaster, and... ugh. Awful. Go throw her in a black hole. Please. Yes, Adventure Time is full of flawed characters. That is something I personally really like about it. But, you see, the thing is, usually, those characters experience something called development. Something which LSP, seemingly, has never heard of. Nor will she ever experience it, because literally every time she seems to have taken even one step forward, she immediately careens 20 steps back, or it's all just wiped away, reset to status quo the next time we see her. Where was I? Alright. Finn regrows a new fancy grass arm, which is visually indistinguishable from his old arm except for the fact that he now has a thorn sticking out of his palm. Which, I gotta say, If I didn't know he was gonna lose that at some point, I would be really disappointed. Because he functionally spends the next entirety of Season 6 and 7 firmly rooted in the throwing off the disability category of wikitropes, which is a category that I have quite a lot of problems with. It gives the impression that to be the hero, a character can't stay disabled. This is, of course, complete bullshit, but you won't often hear any piece of media agree with me on that one, which is quite frankly disheartening. And I think maybe this was part of the reason I fell off of watching Adventure Time back in the day, because obviously at the time I didn't know what was coming. I mean, I didn't exactly know now either, but I had some idea that the new arm was gonna get got at some point, which is where Fern comes into the picture, who probably needs a bunch of context because Adventure Time is fucking wild. Okay, so first thing you need to know, Prismo, remember him? The Lich killed him. Turns out, he set up a contingency plan for that, in which Jake could take his original host body's place in order to dream him into existence, while also continuing to exist as Jake because timelines. But this also led to the brief existence of two Finns, until when they came into contact with each other, one of them turned into a sword, which the other Finn proceeded to use and call Finn Sword. Yes, this show is absolutely buck wild, next question. Anyway, this is relevant because eventually Finnsword gets lost, and picked up by Bandit Princess, who proceeds to use him for evil, so Finn goes to try and take him back, but instead accidentally stabs him with the grass sword. At which point the demon in the grass sword/arm moves over to the Finn sword and starts biding his time until the end of Season 7, where the grass arm detaches from Finn entirely, spawning an entirely new person with all of Finn's memories, who at first thinks he's Finn, but they're very much different people, and he ends up going by Fern instead. And I love him so much. Anyway, Finn is now, finally, back to being an amputee. It was a long, convoluted road we took to get here, but honestly, would it even be Adventure Time if that wasn't the case? Firstly, I gotta get my most frequent criticism out of the way. Amputees don't sleep with their prosthetics. I just had to make a note of that because this keeps happening. Anyway, this time Finn is significantly more chill about losing his arm. Probably doesn't hurt that Bubblegum immediately has a significantly better prosthetic ready to go because, well, she's Bubblegum. Of course she does. He's honestly more worried about Susan and his green doppelganger than he is about his arm, and he has this conversation with Jake.
Is it because you lost the Finn sword?
No.
Is it because you lost your arm again and it got replaced with a metal one?
No, the arm's cool.
Which is just... I love that for him, I really do. It also makes sense. I mean, he's lost this exact arm once before, under much worse circumstances. This probably feels like a walk in the park by comparison. After that, though, well, his prosthetic becomes a bit of a non-entity, which is so much better than being fuel for inspiration porn or any kind of woe is me, however am I to go on as a hero broken and defective as I am. But it is also a bit disappointing. Like, come on, with how much Finn and Jake joke around, you really expect me to believe that Finn the human, of all people, wouldn't integrate amputee humor into his repertoire? Not even the most basic and well-known do you need a hand joke? Really? Okay, sure. But yeah, he spends the rest of the entire series, almost, just running around, being himself, with a prosthetic. Which isn't exactly positive. It's solidly meh on the representation side, because sure, visually it's representation, but functionally it's like a skin in a video game. Once the big plot points about it are done and dusted, it's literally just set dressing. It's never addressed again, we don't see him take it off, ever, that I can recall. We don't see any maintenance, hear about what his life is like with it, it's just... there. Which would be fine for a background character, but he's literally one of the main characters. How hard would it have been to show him doing some basic maintenance on the arm in the background of a scene in the treehouse? Or just taking it off for bed? Just inserting literally any small touch that would make it seem more like a real, tangible part of the world. But no, it's just there. All the way up until the finale. Which is just great. Listen, I love the finale so much. It's so good. But what I really want to talk about here is when Finn, Ice King, and Betty get swallowed up by Golb. On the way in, Finn's arm detaches for the first time since he got it at the beginning of Season 8. Then, Golb starts to digest them all, meaning they're getting reverted to their truest selves. Betty gets turned back into the woman she was before she became utterly consumed by her quest to cure Simon of his magical crown-induced Alzheimer's and/or dementia allegory, and Ice King, well, Ice King ceases to be. He becomes Simon again. His memory returns to him, and he is freed from the crown's grasp. But what's really interesting to me, for the purposes of this video, is what happens to Finn. Or rather, what doesn't happen. Because he doesn't change. Finn goes into Golb's stomach, sans prosthetic, just himself with his stump and no idea if he'll live through this, and nothing happens. When being digested back into his truest self, he stays the same. His arm does not regrow, because this, right here, right now, stump and all, is Finn the human's truest self. It would have been so easy to, quote-unquote, fix him here, to assume that, of course, his truest self wouldn't be disabled, and give him his original flesh arm back. But they didn't, because Finn the human is disabled. End of story. He's been disabled since he was 16, 17, depending on how you want to count it. He will be disabled the day he dies. And he is completely and utterly at peace with that. After his arm gets lost on the way into Golb's stomach, he doesn't get a new one for the rest of what's left of the finale either. He just hangs out with his stump. When the other humans, his biomom included, sail to Ooo, he runs to greet them, sans prosthetic. In the second episode of Distant Lands, when we see him as an adult, he's hanging out with no prosthetic in sight, just chilling at a party with his stump out and a memorial tattoo for Jake on his chest. I know this seems like a weird thing to harp on, but it's so rare that we're allowed to see something like this. Just a character hanging out without their prosthetics. Which, admittedly, I hadn't even realized until I watched this and realized I'd never seen it before. The next time we see Finn with a prosthetic is in Together Again when he's an old man and has kicked the bucket. And when he's allowed to pick literally whatever form he's ever had over his myriad lifetimes, he picks his teenage self post-amputation.
This is what you're going with, huh?
Yeah, it's recognizable.
It's so nice to have a character who's disabled and so utterly chill with it, while still noting that they are disabled. Yes, there are some rough patches, almost all of Season 6 and 7, as well as the long void of meh leading up to the finale, but god did they pick up speed at the very end there. All in all, Finn is representation-wise for the vast majority of the main series, but honestly, I at least am more than willing to forgive that in light of how clearly they showed that it's literally just that easy not to fuck shit up horribly. And for being one of the first pieces of media I've seen where a character is allowed to be chill and accepting of his disability. Like, I thought I was chill with my body before this, but seeing Finn just absolutely vibing out, dancing around with no shirt and no prosthetic introduced me to a new level of chill I can only strive for. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, consider liking it and maybe subscribing. I will be back here Thursday after next. Bye.